yeah, I hit it first time, and luckily for me, it's gone in, or whatever. And what happened? Someone else would be like, it was the best moment of my life. I thought my heart was going to explode. It was like, it was better than sex.
Dominic Garnett is a fishing author and photographer who's published over 300 articles in print and multiple books spanning both instructional and storytelling genres, including Fishing for Dummies, Hooked on Lure Fishing, Fly Fishing for Coarse Fish, Canal Fishing, The Practical Guide, Tangles with Pike and Crooked Lines. The list goes on and on. I'm delighted to be able to invite you to enjoy spending a while with me now in the company of Dominic Garnett. So, Dominic, welcome aboard, and thanks ever so much for giving up your time today. It's a pleasure to. I've been actually pretty keen to have you on for a little while, so I was delighted when you said yes to this.
No worries, I'm not going anywhere for a while anyway.
Well, I pounced. Yeah, I thought I'd take my opportunity and pounce while you were sort of safely quarantined. So obviously folks will know you from the copious amounts of writing that you've done over the years and sort of hundreds of magazine articles, numerous books, and we'll definitely get into those and dive into that. But how long have you been actually an angler, and how did it all start for you?
It started from the age of only about 3 on the River Thames. And I'm in Devon these days, but I started in sort of Middlesex way on the River Thames. It would have been a very simple carbon fibre whip. Fiberglass whip rather, back in those days. And yeah, I think I've still got it somewhere. It feels so clunky today by today's standards. And catching roach. It very nearly didn't last very long at all, because I actually managed to fall in the river one of the very first sessions, and it was this was never explained to my mother, because my dad was worried we'd never be allowed to go fishing again. So it's a bit like the official.
Whatever you do, don't tell your mum.
I think she found out about it about 2 years ago, actually, and I'm 41 now. So yeah.
Well, I'm impressed that your lips were kind of sufficiently. You obviously were keen on it to be wanting to kind of keep that secret. You know?
I was desperately keen on it right from the beginning, I think. Yeah.
And then, so you started out on roach and the kind of I guess the classic sort of apprenticeship and that a lot of us go through. But how did things sort of develop and change over the years? And what avenues did you end up going down in fishing?
I've had a really kind of varied and quite a random journey, to be quite honest. I think I probably got more serious when I was about 9 or 10, and I started regularly getting some of the magazines, your Angling Times and Improve Your Course Fishing back then. I used to devour from cover to cover. But I got more into sort of, a bit more finesse, because when we were kids, it used to be basically the only big fish we caught would be my dad chucking a swim feeder out further than we could get with our whips. But yeah, I slowly graduated towards sort of more sort of finesse fishing first, I guess, hole fishing. I was very keen on match angling in my teens. From about the age of 13, I really like match fishing. But then, there've been so many different evolutions. That's the great thing about fishing, of course. Your journey doesn't have to be like, oh, I am this kind of angler. No, we're all anglers, aren't we? Whatever we do. But no, I suppose the other breakthrough moment, I think, other than buying my first pole, was getting a fly rod for Christmas when I must have been about 21. But that was something that was completely different for me, because I'd read about it and just found it quite fairly baffling. I thought you needed sort of David Bellamy level understanding of insects to go fly fishing. But I was amazed how simple it was. And actually, the biggest problem wasn't understanding all the stuff living under the stones. It was being 6'5" and being very easily seen by the fish. But no, that was the real watershed moment for me. I think with certainly with doing something a bit different and having something to maybe something that really interested me to sort of share with other people, because it wasn't very popular at the time to go for coarse fish necessarily.
Yeah.
A lot of the fishing near me was very exclusive, very expensive. I was never going to be able to do a lot of it, so I had to sort of, they say necessity is the mother of invention. I had to make do with the local canal and the little local mill stream, all these places that were kind of cheap as chips, and there weren't any trout in a lot of them, but I was still mad enough to go and try and catch fish on them.
I think that's fantastic, and it's actually two of the kind of the core aims of what we're trying to do at Fishing Discoveries is to one is to remove barriers to people. So sometimes those barriers can be financial, or it could be distance, or geography, or whatever it is. But basically to instill into people the idea that you can have a fishing adventure wherever you find water, and just like broadening that skill set is opens those sort of doors. And then the other thing is that being able to join the dots between those different disciplines as well, so that you try a bit of everything, and then you'll improve other aspects of your fishing that you didn't expect to, because you gain some understanding around the whole context of it. So I think you're like almost the perfect example of that, and it sort of, I guess, culminating for one example in publishing your book on like coarse fish on the fly. So you've actually very effectively melded what people may perceive as two totally different branches of angling there. So how did that book actually come about?
It just came about from like all the different things I'd done, really, all the different fish I'd tried to catch. Obviously, I'm by no means the first. I'd been reading with great interest people like Fulkerson Buller and Richard Walker. Been doing it and probably seen it as a bit odd as well, 50 years ago. But yeah, it was just a culmination of things. Part of it was because I was fascinated with all these methods, but the more I looked, kind of the less that was there to find. And in a way that was daunting, but it was also really exciting because, I'm as guilty of it as the next angling journalist, but always providing sort of tailor-made solutions for everything. But actually, the most exciting thing about fishing is finding your own little route, whether it's those little fisheries near you that people don't know much about, or mixing and matching different methods and styles of fishing, because the only constraints really and the barriers are those we put on ourselves in some ways. And hopefully more and more people are subscribing to that ethos of, you don't have to bracket yourself as like, oh, well, I'm a specimen angler, or oh, I'm a match angler. No, like all of these different schools of fishing can all sort of have a dialogue together, and it's more interesting because of it.
Yeah, preach on. I mean, I'm busy high-fiving you from this side of the the conversation. It's just absolutely.
It's the only safe high five.
We can do that. That's a thing. I guess one of the things that fascinates me about the people that I'm interviewing, and particularly yourself as well, is the different skill sets and the different places that it leads, just having a life in angling, the other things that throws up. So one of the things I was interested in is how the whole writing thing came about, where either the motivation or the idea or the opportunity, and how that all started, and what your first steps into that were.
Well, it's a good little opportunity to talk about it, actually, I should first say, just because we really need more people to contribute at the moment. We really need more young writers to come forward as well. And just to give you some background on my route in, I think the first time I tried to write something, I had a couple of articles. The editors would probably say, after not getting any response at the beginning, it probably took me another couple of years to try again. And I was a decent writer. I'd had a bit of previous with writing for magazines and stuff. But no, it started for me really writing about pike fishing. Some of your listeners might even remember, it doesn't exist anymore, but the magazine was Pike and Predator. It's a very specialist magazine for you there. But
so what was that about?
What could that be? The editor actually, sadly, he's no longer with us. A chap called James Holgate was the first guy to actually give me a proper response and say, like, hey, this is really interesting, you should write more. So I owe the guy a debt, really, because he was the first one to kind of encourage me and start to give me critical feedback, like, don't write so much about this, try a bit more of this, let's know more about this. And it really went from there. And the stuff I was doing with the fly fishing for the coarse species as well was obviously a natural thing to write about. And to be perfectly honest, some of the things I wrote about, I did it almost not because I was a bit of a know-it-all, but because I kind of wanted to read about them myself, but I just wasn't finding the information. So I kind of thought, well, why don't I give it a go? Because I'm no world-beating angler. I'm not a national champion of anything really, but it's it's just that's why I wanted to get across to you as well that more people should give it a go, because
that almost.
It's daunting, but the trouble is, it's like we just end up with people who are, they're brilliant anglers, but a lot of them, I don't want to dismiss them because obviously they're fantastic, the knowledge they can impart to us, but we need more people into the writing side of it as well who can actually inspire people. And
that almost perfectly preempts one of the questions that I had. Sorry, there's a tiny lag there, so I talked over you a little bit, but it almost preempts one of the questions that I had, which was, if you're speaking to a non-angler or somebody who's vaguely curious, what choice of words might you use to kind of try and impart what it feels like to go fishing? The kind of the experiential sort of side of it. Do you have any words of wisdom to try and sort of draw people in that way?
I always want to first get across to people the kind of magic and excitement of it. It's the kind of tingle, if you like, when you catch a fish, isn't it? It's I think we often sort of try and talk it up a bit, sort of almost bookishly, like so it's something quite prosaic and sort of like, oh, it's about being at one with nature, or it's therapeutic. It is all of those things, of course, but first and foremost, for me, it's exciting. It's such a blasphemy that we have the general public have this idea that it's really piss boring. You just sit around all day doing absolutely nothing. No, it's really exciting. The addictive part of it is that tingle, isn't it? It doesn't matter if it's a tiny fish or a big one. It's just that thrill of sort of connection. And I think for me, it's that connection with something that's mysterious and only knowable to a certain extent. It's the same thrill you get when you're a little kid turning over stones or looking through rock pools. It's in some ways, it doesn't matter how advanced our tactics become. It's still that kind of primal excitement of contact with something exciting and unknown.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a kind of a tension and anticipation. I think that's what non-anglers don't maybe get, is that anticipation and that sense as that builds up, that something's about to happen and you don't know exactly when, and there's that unpredictability to it as well. So I think the fact you don't get that kind of routine and regular sort of reward as well, it's an unpredictable reward. I think that has a very addictive quality to it.
Definitely, in some ways, I've talked to this many times with anglers. In some ways, it's the frustration that makes it addictive as well. If it was really, really easy all the time, it would become dull quite quickly. And funnily enough, I was talking to another angler actually who was raised in my neck of the woods. Actually, Steve Stones, who's the serving editor of the Angling Times. We were saying, in a way, had we fished brilliant waters, we might never. But the fact we both fished Exeter Canal, which was like desperately hard, but it meant that when you caught like a little sort of 2-ounce perch, it was just like, yes, it was, results. But so there's something in that as well. It can be too easy actually fishing sometimes. If you go to a country where nobody fishes, it can almost be like there's no challenge to this. You can't possibly appreciate the achievement when pretty much anything that you do results in success. And I think that doesn't have quite the same value to it in a way. We live in quite a strange country in one way for fishing. I mean, we sort of pat ourselves on the back as being the country that evolved all these methods of fishing, but actually fishing in the UK can be relatively hard because we've got a small island who quite like to fish. Somewhere like Finland and fish for pike, you might be fishing a lake that hasn't been fished for 5-10 years, and the same pike will hit your lure again and again and again and again until it's hooked.
Yeah, very true, very true. I suppose there may be a strange parallel with sort of comedy, that the idea that comedy is almost a release of discomfort. If you can hang on to that sort of tension and that discomfort, and then the release of that is what makes you laugh. And I think, again, with fishing, you've got that, like you said, the frustration, and then when it all, the magic happens, and it's like, it's always sort of a messy mix of all those things, I think. But I guess it's one thing is apparent. We're always reaching for words and the ideal words for it. It is difficult to capture. It is difficult to describe. But I just wish we had some more universally useful kind of ways of passing that on to people and sort of extolling the virtues of it.
Maybe this is why we need more writers and more people to do that. It's a bit like, it's a difficult thing to describe though, isn't it? But I was thinking it's almost like footballers, isn't it? Sometimes it's like you get the people who are brilliant at it, and they'll they'll do something amazing, like score a goal at Wembley, but they'll be like, when you ask them about it, they'll be like, yeah, I hit it first time, and luckily for me, it's gone in, or whatever. And what someone else would be like, it was the best moment of my life. I thought my heart was going to explode. It was like, it was better than sex, They never say it. They're always so pedestrian about the way they describe it.
There was a kid that I went to primary school with, and whenever we were given like a task to do a creative writing task, he'd always just describe the football game that we'd played at like lunchtime. So it was like, Dazza passed it to me, I passed it to Barry, he passed it to Paul, and then there was a goal. And like, every single story was exactly the same. So yeah, it could easily turn into that quite quickly, couldn't it? So do you I know that you have this kind of a very broad and generalist sort of taste in things, but do you have a soft spot for any particular species, and if so, what might that be?
I think if I had to pick my favourite species, I'd still probably say pike. Just because I think that's just because a pike was probably my first taste of an angler as being, not just excited by a fish, but literally feeling like a bit nervous, a little bit scared.
Yeah.
What's going on next.
Yeah, they're freaking really terrifying.
Yeah. I must have been about 11 or 12 when I had my first pike, and it was just like such an amazing feeling. And there's a story in that in itself, because we'd basically seen pike attacking our keep net and sometimes grabbing stuff that we're bringing in on the little river near us. My dad bought us these pike plugs for Christmas. We thought, you're going to catch one of those. Of course, a really kind of cheap and nasty wiggling plug, and it actually broke in half when I hooked a pike, and the join in it was really weak. It's a lesson there, right? If you're going to buy your kids plugs, don't buy them cheap rubbish. Sorry, Dad, but Anyway, really luckily for me, also had a spinner in the box. We managed to catch the same fish that had and retrieved, the broken lures. But it was just like that fish was just like felt like a miracle. It was just like, oh my God, what is that doing in that little river? Because we've been catching little gudgeon and stuff like that.
Yeah. Fantastic.
It's a tough call, but it would be pike. Yeah.
I think it's that jawline and that sort of real prehistoric look to the whole, the head, and also that kind of, all of the fins at the back end. It's like a torpedo, isn't it?
We were talking about shattering this idea that fishing is kind of prosaic and dull and not really inspiring. And no, fish does it better than pike, does it? Fishing's boring, really. Come pike fishing, watch a pike take. It's just that is anything but a dull old man sport, right? That's thrilling stuff. It's visceral.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Hemingway wouldn't have been disappointed, I don't think, describing that, the sudden violence of that.
Yeah, whereas I couldn't see Hemingway maybe trotting on the test for roach or whatever.
The briar pipe on.
He'd have been drunk and obnoxious by lunchtime, wouldn't he? I think he'd have quite quickly got bored with it.
It's been a good story. Okay, then given that maybe, pike notwithstanding, do you enjoy that idea of kind of fishing the seasons and doing almost that Mr. Crabtree type thing of, what's good this month and sort of targeting that?
I do, and I definitely believe in the seasons. There's almost a bit of sort of ritual about fishing. It's like this. It's kind of a bit cliche, but there are definitely times of the year. It's like, at the end of the May, early June, you want to be fishing the rise with the mayflies. There's a time of year where you see the bubbles come up and you want to fish for tench. There's an icy cold morning, you want to watch the pike float. There is a bit of that. I just think it's kind of it's one of the benefits of getting a bit older and uglier but wiser, hopefully, that you can kind of time your fishing trips better as well. It's like there's a bit of a danger when you're younger, I just want to catch this kind of fish and nothing else, when actually there's time for everything in the year. And as you do get older, you end up with less childcare and the rest of it, but it means you can be a bit smarter. So you're thinking for example, at the moment, if we were allowed to go fishing at the moment, but, baking hot, sunny day, late spring, summer, it immediately tells me it's going to be really pretty dire to fish for tench, say, or trout on the fly in the middle of the day. They're not going to be in the mood. So experience will tell you it's perfect for rudd. They don't mind that there's no cloud in the sky. They don't mind that it's really still. In fact, it makes it really easy to spot. It's like the same might have when you were a kid thought, oh, Sonny, I'm going to go carp fishing. Absolutely rubbish normally for big carp, isn't it? They just sort of they're like big fat sunbathers. They just don't want to do anything. So the time to go is when your folks don't want you to go, when it's when it's really cloudy and kind of close, and maybe quite a stiff wind blowing into one corner of the lake. I guess we learn by our trials and errors, but the seasons have a lot to do with it. I think over time you realise it's not just there because it sounds nice in all the traditional books. The seasons are they're quite beautifully defined, really, when you think about it in fishing, aren't they?
I think they are in this country. Yeah, I think we're lucky.
How many other sports go on through a whole year? You can name every month in the year. Even with the closed season, you've got trout. Even when it's bitterly cold, you've got predator fishing and you've got stillwater trout. We're really lucky in that respect. I definitely believe in following the seasons. We're blessed like that.
And I think as well, because we do, the vagaries of our particular climate, we do have that very definite kind of boundary between those different experiences and different seasons as well. And I think definitely. In some places, if you live on the equator, you probably don't. It's like 365 days a year, same thing. But so when we do get out of this lockdown situation, what's the first thing? What's the first piece of tackle that you're going to reach for, and what's your first experience, ideally, on a piece of water?
That probably, I'm going to cheat a little bit and give two options, because that might depend on what the weather's been like. If it's been, ideally, what I'd really like to do is probably go on a little trout stream somewhere. If it ends before June, anyway, in the closest. I'd like to go either on a little trout stream or I'm on one of my local canals stalking some rudd with the fly rod. If the weather's absolutely horrible, though, I'll probably go and fish for carp, to be honest. But I haven't fished for that long. I do quite fancy getting a real, a big proper bend in my rod. Yeah, so in a perfect world, though, some sight fishing for either rudd or trout with a fly.
Fantastic, great answer. So are there things that you see at the moment within the fishing, well, whether it's the industry or the community, is there stuff that annoys you at the moment? What gets under your skin?
It's generally, how rude can I be on this interview?
Listen, you're among friends.
It's just generally the social media side of it. I don't know why some people have to be so obnoxious all the time. I probably get a bit of extra flack because I've got a part-time role with the Angling Trust for my sins. Basically, I do some blogging and some work to promote them. Actually, we've done a sterling job really with the coronavirus crisis, because we're finally getting people pulling in the same directions. There's a really brilliantly researched document that's gone to government. But yes, people on social media, they're just so negative. People are becoming so judgmental, and I think social media's encouraged it. And actually, when I talk to the non-anglers in my life, they find this really hard to believe. I'm like, people are so bitter. People are so horrible to each other. And they're like, really? I thought angling was kind of gentle. I'm like, no, this is...
Do you feel it is particularly pronounced within the angling sort of, well, the discussion groups or the social media kind of platforms based around angling?
I think it's often the platforms that really encourage it. I don't think it's healthy. Yeah, maybe the problem isn't that pronounced. It's these really aggressive and blowhard type people. They're probably 1 in 20, but the problem is they don't often make a lot of noise. People are kind of smart and a bit more thoughtful. They're not shouting their heads off, are they? Probably a lot of them are not even on Facebook, to be honest. I don't know. Yeah, I just think people should be generally just a bit kinder and a bit more prepared to support angling and just give each other a bit more of a break. People they're still so tribal and judgmental. They just love to attack anything and anybody.
It's interesting. I was having a conversation with one of my friends, and they said that they were talking about Brexit, and basically that this is before lockdown, but they were in the pub.
Brexit hasn't helped with that. It's really put people at loggerheads.
Yeah, but Matt's point was that that they were both on the opposite sides of that debate, but they had a pint and they had some robust discussions around it, and they ended on amiable terms. Whereas I think within social media, when you try and have that discussion, it just ends up so polarized that you can't have a conversation in the middle at all.
Definitely, but the whole system kind of rewards people for fighting. Also, if you get a thread and it's got lots of like intuitive, like good comments, but one or two people have really kind of poked the wasp's nest, it will put that comment to the top because it's got the most reactions. It's just one example, but we've got to be really careful about that. I wish I knew what the answer was, but we've all just got to give each other a bit more of a break and be a bit less judgmental.
So some kind of spring-loaded boxing glove that shoots out of your monitor. Because in a pub, you might get punched in the face for saying some of the stuff that people say on Facebook, for example. But there's no downside to it on online.
That's the thing I've been surprised at times, for example, like online, because some of these people I've met in real life at fishing events and things, I'm just like, what? It's like when I met them in real life, I've got on really, really well with them,
Yeah.
Weirdly, I'd probably have a lot more in common with them in real life than I would with maybe people who share more of my sort of politics. Do you know what I mean? It's a funny place, but we've got to be wary of that. Yeah, I don't know where it's going to go with social media. It's brought us some big benefits as well, but it's not always healthy.
I think it's one of those things where we, as human beings, need to catch up with that as a technology, and I think it's left us behind a little bit, and we're not very good at managing it in the way that we ought to. I think. So.
This is a much, much bigger conversation, right? But there's still a lot of people without an awful lot of what I'd call like emotional education in the way they respond to other people. People might think that's all kind of a bit hippie, but what I mean is, the way they conduct themselves, the way they control their emotions. It's almost like we've got this amazing magic box in our lives, but on some level, we're still on the level of cavemen. Part of us is still quite tribal and still kind of is up for a ruck at all times, even though we should have moved well beyond that nonsense by now. We're going to have to evolve with it. That's the only answer, isn't it? We're going to have to evolve with it. You can't fight fire with fire. It's...
Yeah, absolutely.
We have to all swallow our pride a little bit more and actually listen a bit more and pontificate a little bit less, I guess. And just be nicer to each other. It's not rocket science, is it? 5-year-old people understand.
Hang on. So what you're saying is try not to be such a dick all the time. Is that the wisdom?
Yeah.
Okay. It's revelation.
You basically just grab all of the 10 commandments, couldn't you? And just put don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Please.
Some kind of flow chart, are you being a dick? No, carry on.
Yeah.
Yes. Go. Yeah. So before we get too far off track.
We should move on from social media. Yeah.
About happier things then. Tell me about Crooked Lines and that what's in there that still inspires you to this day.
Well, Crooked Lines was really my attempt to sort of distill everything that I've done so far, basically. Not necessarily the best fishing. It's not a collection that will teach you how to, trot perfectly for roach or whatever, or tie a fly or whatever, but it's just all the stories that really stuck out to me as like memorable or bizarre. So you've got fishing in the middle of Manhattan in Harlem Mere, for example. You've got ice fishing in Norway. You've also got fishing in some of the pokiest places you can imagine, like really gritty urban settings in this country, like casting a fly at trout in front of like this machine that's crushing cars to bits. And it's just a collection of all kinds of a lot of them they were the stories from my career that proved sort of frustrating because I was really pleased with them. I thought, nobody's written about that before, but a lot of the editors kind of didn't want them. Not because they'd write back and say, they're really entertaining, but it just kind of doesn't fit with the, we can't have you catching something in Central Park and watching your back because there's, drug dealers around. And then the next page, like, how to fish the pellet waggler. You're just not going to sit right. In a way, it was my chance to get my own back. So it's kind of the best and the but also kind of just the strangest and most entertaining work I'd put together. And yeah.
No,
But, I mean,
fantastic.
my books are really varied as well, because of course the one most people would know is probably Fly Fishing for Coarse Fish.
But I should say as well, I'll certainly put links to your collection of stuff wherever this is embedded, whether it's a blog post on social media or whatever. So people that are watching and or listening can get hold of samples for themselves.
Yeah, I should also talk a little bit about the new book, because that's been really exciting. If you haven't seen it, Hooked on Lure Fishing, it's a guide to catching like over 60 different species basically on lure fishing tackle, and that's been really, really thrilling. Like, just perhaps at the point when I was getting a little bit jaded with the fishing landscape, the ultralight lure fishing really kicked on. I've always been a really keen lure angler, but teamed up with a chap from Weymouth called Andy Mitten, who just got mind-blowing ideas on using different lures and presentations for fish. 10 years ago, if you told me half these species were catchable on lures, I'd have laughed at you.
Yeah.
Flatfish, wrasse, like all these strange rockfish. Just brilliant fun, and in many ways, Andy's been a bit of a pioneer, perhaps in the same way that I was for some of the coarse species. But it's really interesting as well, and it's. Yeah, the moment he mentioned some of these things, I knew we are going to have to try and convince him to work on a book with me, because it's not every day in fishing you can say, it's that old cliche, isn't it? Like, there's nothing new in fishing. Well, actually, sometimes there really is. It's really, really exciting, or methods meeting, or different things being done. So that's been a really exciting project.
It sort of drives me insane when people say, "Oh, nothing new in fishing." It's like, well, no, if you're going to reduce it to that, there's never been an original thought ever. Every single invention is a combination of two things that were already known, but they just haven't been put together before. Nobody's ever had an original thought.
There's no new music, is it? Or there's no new literature. Like,
yeah.
It's all come from somewhere, isn't it? We're all magpies in some way, aren't we?
Exactly.
We've all kind of begged, borrowed, and stolen from here, there, and everywhere. Added a little bit of our own to it, and come up with a new combination of parts, haven't we? That's how things are new. Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's lazy.
It is, and I think people that want to kind of crush that sort of, don't show me any of that newfangled. So there's nothing new under the sun. No. It's a bit like saying, there's 26 letters in the alphabet, so all the words have been used already. So there's no point in writing anything new.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is sort of sometimes that old generation of angler kind of like, since they come along and they think like, "Oh, teach me anything new." Yeah, sometimes they're right. Like, you should always give everyone a chance, because they might have a completely different experience to you.
But the flip side is true, isn't it? It's like, you can learn loads of stuff from people that have done stuff. It's like, I'm curious about that stuff as well. It's just that I'm equally curious about it.
Experience is always telling in fishing, isn't it? It's one of the great things about the sport as well, the fact that you can do it for a lifetime and it's still new in that sense. There's still more.
Yeah. So just rewinding a little bit, when you're sort of growing up and developing in your angling, did you have sort of angling buddies, or was it you kind of going off and having adventures in your own head a little bit?
It's a mixture of sort of all of the above, really. You might not thank me for saying so, but my dad was like not a very good angler, like quite a clumsy angler. He occasionally would like fluke a bream on the swim feeder, but he was more interested in just being there. He was a typical, he was a science teacher. Basically, he became head teacher, so he was as interested in like boring you with the Latin names of stuff. But no, he just loved being on the bank, and it was all about the natural world. And in a way, I'm really grateful for that, because I could have been taught by someone who's deadly serious, and that could have put me off. But my dad's always been very laid back about it, and like it doesn't really bother him if he doesn't catch a lot. But he's always just had a lovely attitude to fishing. But no, in terms of other people, I guess I've always just I've made a lot of friends through fishing, and I've mixed with a lot of different people, and I think in my writing career as well, I've never been worried about being the best at anything. And I think it's a good way to be. Like, you should never be too proud to just like put your own rod down on watch someone else, shadow somebody else, or ask someone who's blatantly better than you at something how they do it, what they're up to. So, and I hope in my writing I've tried to make the fishing and the character's the story rather than it being all about me. And it's worked in my favour for it, because I've always, just always been interested in what other people get up to. And
But I think paradoxically that kind of approach ends up inevitably making you a better angler than you would otherwise have been. So it's like it is sort of semi-selfish in a way. Well, that's the wrong way of putting it. You end up with an improvement.
And one of the sayings I like is, it's amazing what can be achieved if you don't mind who gets the credit. It's like, if you see it as a collective thing, fishing, like, there's an amazing amount of expertise, isn't there? There are also things that never come out. I know brilliant anglers who never post or share or write anything. So, back to my point about there not being enough fishing writers. It's, there are people who should have written books on it.
And do you think is the stuff that we should be doing as a community to support those people that do stick their head above the parapet a little bit and actually have a go at writing? And how do we get more people to give it a bash?
I think you have to encourage them. You have to support your fishing media as well. You have to support your independent publishers. You have to support the magazines and things, because they get enough of a knocking, because they have to kind of be all things to all men. But it's a really difficult one at the moment. We're in an era where a lot of people just sort of don't want to pay for anything, or it's very difficult. What I worry is the more layers of this we lose, the more magazines. For example, me starting out writing, I was by no means the finished article. I could write a bit, but I didn't really know, how to write for particular audiences and things necessarily. But in several cases, like with James Holgate, like with people like Steve Cullen on the fly fishing side of it, like people at the Angling Times helped me. Those people were able to kind of steward me a little bit and just say, we really like that, or like, what you want about there? Just sort of chisel me into the writer I am today, basically. And I worry that blogs are great, but you don't have that level of kind of mentorship. You don't have the quality control. And I'm not knocking other people, because I get emails several times, quite often from angling writers who are, like, where do I start? Who do I? I'm always willing to give them some advice, but a lot of the time, I just worry they won't get that level of. We need to nurture these people, but for the average angler, the answer is support books, support magazines, support media, because without giving some rewards, some people will do it as a bit of a hobby for a bit of a laugh, but you need to nurture these people, and you need to pay them a few quid as well.
I think if that would absolutely, because if that's not the case, the only people that will be able to do it are people that are already independently wealthy, and that's obviously fine for them and for. I
won't lie to you. It's not an easy living at all. Making your keep from fishing. It's probably taken me a decade, from dropping a couple of days of my day job a week to getting guiding qualifications and teaching people, getting a column or two going. So I was in a position where I could drop a day, then 2 or 3 days, and eventually I've got enough fingers in enough pies to make it work. But it's bloody hard. I wish more people would do it at the same time, but I think if a lot of people saw the route I'd taken, I'm not sure they'd really fancy it. They're probably cleaners who've made more money than that time is. But I don't want to discourage people, because you might. It's its own reward in a way. But we desperately need to support more angling writers,
and I think as well it's a very, very hard lesson in that the reality of the fact that we're trained now as a society that things are available instantly, and people sort of seem to expect the same thing to happen when. I don't know, if they start a YouTube channel, or they want to be a writer, or they start something up. It's going to take a long time, and you're going to have to spend a while being terrible at it in order to get good at it eventually, sort of thing.
It's a slow burn, whatever you do. And obviously, I'm biased. I'm still a bit old school. I love books and magazines, but it's the same with videos. You don't become a brilliant filmmaker overnight, or a brilliant photographer overnight, which are also essential skills at the moment if we're going to get more people fishing. It is that. You expect to become an overnight sensation, but no, it takes a long time to build an audience. And again, we need the support in places for these people, and we need people to pay for quality content. one of the other dangers is if we don't have that support, the only kind of content all market driven. Like, tackle industry, etc. They have to survive. We want them to be strong as well, but I don't want a place where every film, every article you write is just sponsored by so and so. We need to sponsor people for the actual craft of putting together quality material in the first place, whether it's writing, whether it's films, whether it's whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to the larger journalism world, isn't it? The demise of print in favour of instantly available
really
digital media.
Even the big titles, like, your Telegraphs and your Times of the mainstream main newspaper world, they're dealing with unpaid interns. You look at some of the articles and they haven't been proofread, they're done really quickly. And again, I don't know what the answer is other than everybody's got to support. It's like you can't criticise that journalism is poor quality or terribly biased or whatever if you don't support good journalism. It's funny enough, it's the same with fishing. You can't complain that no one ever does anything to you unless you kind of give back and support fishing yourself.
Absolutely. Nice. I couldn't agree more. And the idea that we need to create a mechanism to reward quality and get back to that quality being the driver of things. Of course, there needs to be an ecosystem and there needs to be a balance between the people that, I mean, as much fun as it is to make your own fishing tackle, I'm pretty glad that I don't have to make everything from scratch. So we need to have those people that are taking the risks to be manufacturers and developers and doing the R&D for that. Absolutely. But like you say, that has got to be not at the expense of the people communicating the sheer authentic joy of it, that just in and of itself as an activity. So those two things need to support each other.
No, we're not trying to put up sort of walls here. Both things have to be strong. But we all need to support quality output.
Absolutely. Here. I couldn't agree more, Dominic. So just, I guess, as a small rounding up segment, I just wondered what was next in the medium to longer term for DG.
Oh, that's really difficult. My fishing time's become more precious, really, with a little, baby. She's just reached 10 months now. But no, I just intend to keep writing about it and enjoying it. I'm suffering a little bit at the moment, not only from not fishing, but not being able to take anyone fishing, because the guiding is another bit down here in Devon I really, really enjoy every year. It's just such a shame I've had to cancel bookings, and it's one of the best bits of my job, especially when the summer comes and I get to take kids fishing. It's another really lovely bit of my job. So I don't know if I've got a long term plan. I will. I'm not going to do a book for the next year or so, because much as it's a very satisfying thing to do, it's a very draining thing to do as well. So I wouldn't do one every year or two anymore. I think I'd keep the gaps a little bit bigger for my own sanity. Just keep enjoying it, keep working on it, keep trying to put something back at the moment, because I think at the moment we could be at a bit of a turning point, really. Ironically, it seems that this current crisis, the biggest threat to our sport for quite a few years, might just ironically be the thing that actually finally drags us all to pull in the same direction. So that could be really good. So,
Well, it's phenomenal to see you kind of obviously walking the walk. We've talked about the need to support and to bring people in and that kind of thing. So the fact that, a big part of your working life within fishing is kind of taking more people fishing and instilling those different, those values into people is, again, just another massive virtual high five from this side of the computer.
No worries. I mean, some of it I do obviously as in a professional role. I've got my badges and everything. I recommend anyone actually wants to earn a bit of money from fishing to take their badges. So, I also do volunteering bits with the local clubs though. And, I mean, that's something we can all do at the moment. Well, when we're allowed back, it's something we should all be doing. That's the other thing. You've got to get beyond this idea that giving something back is a chore. Like, absolutely not. Like, taking kids fishing is one of the best things you'll ever do. It's one of the most fun parts of. Well, they're always great. They're always so genuine and so excited to catch fish. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Dominic, thank you ever so much for being so forthcoming and for indulging in such an interesting chat today. I really, really appreciate it. Again, I do hope we can do this on the bank sometime and do it outdoors by a fishery and sort of really sort of communicate that joy to people in a very immediate sense.
That'd be great. Yeah. You have to drop me a line when things are a bit closer to normal. Who knows if they'll ever be completely normal again? But yeah.
No, that's it. We're just into the new normal, but I'm sure, I'm very hopeful that fishing will still be part of that in some form.
Good will come out of this as well. Good. There will be good things to come out as well as all the really dark things that we're going to have to endure. Yeah, there will be good to this too.
Fantastic, and thank you ever so much again, and take care of yourself.
That's all right. Thanks very much. Yeah, you're welcome.